Look, I wanted to see the senior minister, or Minister O'Dowd at least, in here, who were the ones who made statements last week with regard to free water for under 18-year-olds, according to the government scheme. Now, and to answer for the fact that every objective yardstick available to the department shows that the allowance they have proposed does not add up to that. Now, Minister Hogan said on RT television news last Wednesday that the water tax for a family of 5, which could be 2 parents and 3 students, for example, over 18, would be €450 a year. The Taoiseach said a few weeks ago that when subsidies from our central taxation are ended to water production, which is the government and the European Union policy, the average tax would be €580 per year, per household. Now, I wonder if the government has any clue of the crushing new economic burden that these demands will place on ordinary householders. But to the immediate issue that I need clarification, and I need it today, Minister Hogan said in Dáil Éireann on Tuesday, May the 6th, that an allowance of 38,000 litres a year for under 18-year-olds meant, and I quote, that water charges will only apply to adults. On national RT television news on Tuesday also, the Minister said effectively children, meaning under 18-year-olds, are free. And on Wednesday, the Minister of State, Fergus O'Dowd, said that the 38,000 litres a year allowance for every under 18-year-old, quote, results in free water for children. That is false. And I require you, Minister of State, to correct that today. This study, the Water Supply Project for the Dublin region, which is commissioned and sponsored by the Department of the Environment, found that average usage of water in Dublin to be 148 litres per person per day. That is 54,000 litres a year. The government says that free water, so-called, for under 18-year-olds means 38,000 litres per year. Minister, a 17-year-old doesn't need to wash less, drink less, or use sanitary facilities less than a 20-year-old, let's say. Therefore, the 38,000 litres allowance for a 17-year-old is 16,000 litres short of what, according to the Water Supply Project of the Department of the Environment, a 17-year-old would use in a year. There is therefore not free water for under 18-year-olds, as the Minister stated. And in case you come back and say, well, perhaps they could economise, according to the projections in this document, Minister, with all metering and charging in place by 2030, the average use will be 130 litres per person per day, which is still 10,000 litres more than the free allowance for under 18-year-olds.
Thank you.
So I need you now to clarify, and I need you to tell the people out there the truth of this matter. Admit that the figures are incorrect.
Thank you.
And correct them.
Thank you. Minister.
Thank you, and I'm answering on behalf of Minister Hogan, who unfortunately can't be here, Deputy Higgins. Last week, the Government announced details of its decision on the funding model for Irish Water. The announcement included details of the free allowance, which will be provided to all customers of Irish Water, which will equate to 30,000 litres per household. An additional allowance will be provided in respect of each child under the age of 18 to cover the normal usage of every child in their primary residence. The allowance will be based on the same qualifying conditions as child benefit. This allowance will be up to 38,000 litres per child per year. The level of consumption on which the level of the free allowance for children is based will be verified by water metering data to be provided to the Commission for Energy Regulation. The provision of the free allowance for children in this way means that no additional charges arise for children, and will increase the affordability of water charges for families with children. Supporting the affordability of water charges is a critical policy objective of the Government. The provision of the free allowance, along with a number of other policy measures, demonstrates the Government's commitment in this regard. Among the additional measures are a decision that there will be no standing charge for households and that a minimum charge may apply to properties such as holiday homes which are not permanently occupied. Support for those with certain medical conditions by capping the level of charges at the assessed charge. Details of this are being finalised with the Department of Health. The provision of additional support for pensioners, persons with disabilities and carers who receive the household benefits package. A commitment to maintain the average charge for domestic water charges at €240 for 2015 and 2016. A requirement for assessed charges to be based on occupancy to provide the best proxy for usage, with provision for rebates for those moving from assessed to metered charges, and the introduction of a first fixed free scheme by Irish Water at a cost of €51 million. The Commission for Energy Regulation has been provided with statutory responsibility for the economic regulation of Irish Water. Under the legislation, the CER will be responsible for approving the water charges plan prepared by Irish Water. The CER has announced that it will be consulting on the water charges plan in June this year, and that the approved water charges plan will be announced in August. Accordingly, households will have full clarity on the level of charges in advance of their introduction. Minister Hogan has announced his intention to use his powers under the Water Services No. 2 Act of 2013 to issue a policy direction to the Commission for Energy Regulation to provide that the Government's decision on the funding model is incorporated into the water charges plan to be approved by the Commission.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy, 2 minutes to reply.
Well, Minister O'Sullivan, you shame yourself coming in here today and engaging in deliberate obfuscation and giving me the whole policy that I didn't ask for, that I'm aware of. But you singularly failed to address the key issue that I raised, which is that an allowance of 38,000 litres a year for an under 18-year-old does not amount to what you called free water for children, for under 18-year-olds. And I have used and quoted from your own study to prove that. So will you address that, please? And that's the only point I want addressed. I know all the other stuff, and I know what a huge burden this will be for families. And of course, in 2 or 3 years, when EU policy and this government's neoconservative policies come into effect, and the subsidy for more central taxation is removed, the price of water for families will shoot up. Now, of course, we hope to build a movement of opposition that will force the abolition of this progressive and reactionary tax on households. But I need you, Minister O'Sullivan, since you were deputed by the Minister, Senior Minister Hogan, to come in here today, answer the net point. Why do you say that 38,000 litres per year is so-called free water for under 18-year-olds when your own study shows that a 17-year-old will use on average 54,000 and in the best possible circumstances would also in 16 years' time be way over that limit? It's very simple. Please clarify.
Thank you, Minister.
Well, can I tell Deputy Higgins, first of all, that the figures that upon which this are based is a study by Atkins, which identifies the amount of water used per size of household. And there is other information available to the Department, for example, in relation to the UK and the amount of water consumed. Now, I mean, it's based on the fact that you know, you don't automatically add the full amount for a one-person household multiplied by 4 for a 4-person household, because that isn't the reality, Deputy Higgins. I mean, if I put on a wash in my washing machine and I have a 5 or 6-person household, you know, a person in a one-person household puts a wash in a washing machine as well, but they're only catering for one person. That's just one example. So, I mean, it's not correct to say that you multiply, if you have a 4-person household, you multiply by 4 the amount of water consumed in a 1-person household. So I just want to make that point to you. And just to say that the study is the Atkins study upon which the figures were based. that study suggests that the amount of allocation for children is enough to cover and ensure that children are free.